Thank you for joining us on the Winning and Selling Podcast. I'm Professor Scott Plum of the Minnesota Sales Institute, and with me is Bill Hellkamp of Reach Development Systems.
Setting goals is crucial to success, but the truth is that many people don't set goals. And if they do, they seldom write them down. Are you a goal setter? Or could the lack of goal setting be keeping you from getting that big commission check? Let's analyze our success process as Scott and I discuss setting goals and hitting quotas, and other great ideas on episode 533 of the Winning at Selling podcast.
All right, we're covering chapter 17 today. I finished the book this last weekend, so I know how the story ends, but I'm not going to spoil it today. Okay, we're just going to concentrate on chapter 17.
I like this chapter. It's kind of like the summary of all their key ideas.
Yeah, they really put it all together, and the last two chapters are a little bit different spin, but still important. And this one, I'm going to start with one of the quotes that came right out of, I think, the first page of the chapter. And it says, most young professionals realize early in their career that at some point, skill in generating business will be an important determinant of their success. And this is by David Master, Young Professionals, who wrote the book, Cultivate the Habit of Friendship. And one of his first books, and I read this 25 years ago, was Trusted Advisor. He was the first one that I learned that term from, Trusted Advisor, through that book. And it's all about being that person that your prospects turn to give them the advice on what decision that they should be making. And that's how you can really be influential, is when you really look at the decision that people need to make, work them through a process. And as I always say, educate to influence, not educate to teach. And you're influencing them on the best decision for them as you as a salesperson, but you're also being objective in going through the entire process and weighing all the options too.
One of the things that I thought of as I was reading this chapter, and I thought it was very valuable, I think, and this is a bias of mine, but I think that women are much better at developing deeper friendships than men are. Mm-hmm. I know most of the men, and myself included, we're pretty good at surface friendships. Somebody calls us, right, and wants to talk, and within a couple of seconds, I'm going to say, "So, Scott, what did you need?"
Mm-hmm.
Right, and then, but my wife can get on the phone, and other women that I know get on the phone and talk about deeper things and deeper issues. And guys don't generally tend to go there. When they talk about cultivating friendships, I don't think a lot of us are as good at cultivating deep friendships as we think we are. We develop a lot of surface friendships, people who know us, we know them, we can call them by name, we can say hi, reference a situation. But we really don't know about their family. We don't know about their needs and their goals and those sorts of things. So I think this is a real good chapter. And you and I probably know some people that are really good at this. I have a friend of mine, Don. And whenever I go, I mean, Don knows everybody and they really like him. And he's just one of those guys that develops really good friendships and relationships with people. And I really took this chapter to heart as something that I need to do. Even late here in my career, I need to do better.
Yeah, I think that there's really two factors that are involved in sort of that general statement. And that is that I think people feel more safe with women. And I think that they feel less threatened by women when they're in a conversation. I think men sometimes can kind of gravitate towards one-upmanship. And, you see it with deer hunters. You get a deer this weekend? Yeah. How big was it? Oh, 10 points.
Bigger than yours, whatever yours was.
I got an 8 or I got a 12. I got a 16 point. So I got to always one-up them on it. And also men, I don't think, like to acknowledge that they don't have information. And that's why they never ask for directions. They do not want to acknowledge that somebody else has information that they need, so they never ask for directions. They go, "Oh, get there eventually, and we're just going to do it my way." And they just want to fix things and solve things. And it's like, if it's not a problem, don't talk to me. Bring me your problems. I can solve them.
Right. And then we get into that solution mode much quicker than we have to. And I think that can be damaging when we think about sales, not just about relationships, but in selling. This desire to fix it for the customer. Sometimes we fix it in the meeting and then they don't need to buy from us.
Yeah.
Right. So don't be fixing things all the time. be delving for more information. So anyway, I got us off track, but I think this is a
No, I
great,
think it's a great
great
topic,
chapter.
and
So
it's certainly relevant. Another great line in this chapter is that in professional services, we are the product. If our product isn't good, no amount of marketing effort will make us successful.
yeah,
And I mean, we got to have a credible service. We got to be intelligent enough to be able to uncover what the problems are. And like I've heard before, is if you don't understand what the prospect's talking about, you don't understand what you're talking about as a
mm-hmm.
salesperson. So we really need to be able to understand the problems and the goals and the understanding the gap, and make sure that the prospects need to understand the gap for us to be able to solve the problem. Otherwise, we create a bigger problem.
Well, let's go
And
in. Let's go into these. I think there's 7 things that he has
seven,
about.
yeah.
Yeah, and the first one is do good work,
Mm-hmm.
and I think this is really crucial. I do talk about a salesman's one of the salesman's mistakes. I think it's the 7 sins of selling. One is thinking that good work is enough to get the next deal, and that
Yeah,
isn't
yeah.
to say that good work isn't important. I think good work is the it's the key. It's the credit card. It's the thing that says that you're going to be able to play the game. But don't, as a salesperson, think that by doing good work, everyone's going to start to bow and scrape at you, and everyone's talking to each other about what great work you did. You need to be able to go out there and get credit for the good work that you do.
Right, right. Yeah, so true. Number 2 is become your own chief revenue officer. And I've seen this title on a few salespeople that say, chief revenue officer, they're the director of sales or the vice president of sales. But we, as salespeople, need to be our own chief revenue officer. And there's a great line in the book that says, delegate business development to others at your own risk
Right.
and at your own expense, too.
Right.
Because
If someone else is building all the business, they don't need you. There's a lot
right.
of practitioners out there that can deliver. It's the salespeople that are the unique piece, the rainmakers.
Yeah, and so often salespeople, that have a blended role of sales and account management, they gravitate towards what's easiest. That's human nature, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's human nature. We need to be conscious of it, going, how can I make sure that I'm constantly filling my pipeline with new leads? And that's a commitment, but it's also something that you have to measure in order to manage. How many new leads have you talked to this week? If you
That's
don't do
right.
that, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, and I think he was trying to make the point here that you have to think of it as your own business,
Mm-hmm.
and because you may be in your own business all of a sudden. And he used an example of somebody who his company got bought out, and he really didn't like the way the new people were running things, so he went
Right.
on his own.
I think
All right,
about that when I started my sales career, which was a server at a restaurant. I mean, I was in sales. I was selling appetizers, I was selling desserts, and I had 5 tables or 6 tables, and this was my territory. This was my area. This was my real estate, and I wanted to turn and burn. I wanted to serve and sell and flip and get the next couple in there, and I wanted to just keep turning those tables over. And it didn't cost me anything to lease the space, but I got all the revenue and commissions, which were tips at the time.
right.
The mindset.
Number three is build your network. And this goes back to our earlier conversation that it's not about glad handing and handing out business cards like many people do in a networking meeting. It's about trying to drive a quality conversation and then follow that up with something. If there's a good relationship being built there, try to build that relationship. And again, this is an area where I could do better. I know a lot of people, but I don't always make that second phone call and go out and have a cup of coffee with them and get to know them a little bit better. And now that the world has opened up again after COVID, I think that we like to be with other people. So if there's people out there, build your network with those people that are moving around.
And it lasts a little bit longer than you really think. And I think about joining chambers, and I've been involved in many, many chambers. I've done presentations for the last 20 years on sales development. I had one person in a class 20 years ago, and now they're introducing me to a Fortune 100 company division on doing some work. And we met 20 years
There
ago.
you go.
And I maintained that relationship and that conversation. And now I'm getting introduced to that company to do some work on developing their sales team. It never ends, meaning you start now and you're planting seeds for the future.
Yep.
Number 4 is develop your own style. And I really want to stress the difference between style and process.
Thank you.
Style,
Thank you. That's exactly what I thought.
style is the personality. It's the flavor that you have as a salesperson. The process is something that the company follows, that the sales channel follows in order to measure, so that we can manage. Sales managers never step on a salesperson's style, never offend their style. Be open-minded to their flair, their style, to your process, and to be able to support the two. The style is the ego of the salesperson. Never step on a salesperson's ego. You will deflate them, and the expense is tremendous when you do that as a sales leader.
I can't tell you, Scott. I'm glad you introduced this topic this way. The number of people that I talk to in a training class that say, "Oh, but I want to do it with my own style." That's fine. Do it with your own style, but have some kind of a format. We do that. We find this all the time because we maybe use calling tracks and ways to call somebody and the things that you want to say. Oh, this isn't my style. What is your style? Oh, hi, this is Larry. How you doing?
Yeah.
You ever, you got no style, man. You got
Right.
no process. You're just blathering.
Right.
Use this. Here's a format you can use, and then put your style into that format where you ask the right questions and you're driving it toward an appointment. So don't confuse style with having nothing to say and no way to do it. That's not a style. That's just going in and blathering to somebody, and we find that all the time. You have to have a process. So thanks. Number
Yeah.
5, dedicate time for business development. And as you mentioned, when somebody has 2 roles, this is the role that seems to drop off. I have a great client I've been working with. They are customer service centric, and they do a great job in customer service, but they give a lot more kudos for customer service than they do for selling. And therefore, everybody spends their time doing customer service, which is great, but it's also easier than business development. And I'm never going to get yelled at for doing customer service things.
Right. Right. So true.
But I won't be doing my business development thing. So,
Yep. Yep. And this is, leadership has got to be able to have a philosophy of reward the behavior you want to instill. So we have behavior, yes, make 50 phone calls every single day. What are the objectives within the 50 phone calls? What categories are we calling on? What products are we really offering? So foot on the gas is behavior, hands on the steering wheel is objectives. Make sure you've got a combination of both and dedicate the amount of time to each activity. If it's business development, if it's filling the pipeline or servicing existing accounts, and to be able to dedicate time to cold calling. I call them power hours or rush hours, where you just spend an hour. I've got a list of, let's pick 25 names, and you're going to spend 1 hour calling these 25 records. It's amazing how many you will call in one hour. Really focused, you're sharpened, you're ready to go. There's no distractions. Do a power hour twice a day, 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. You'll be amazed how it will make you feel when it comes to the activity in the results of it and the conversations that'll get started during that time. Number 6 is stay persistent and positive in the face of many no's. And in this section, they list a bunch of thoughts that prospects have regarding the salespeople. And I think I'll summarize it. Salespeople are assumptive, and prospects are always asking, I don't know you. I don't know what you do. I don't know. I don't trust you. I don't know anything about you. So we really need to be able to build that relationship before we start talking about our solutions and really uncovering the problems first.
yeah, I think it's interesting because one of the things I found that there's times in my career where I'm not getting enough no's. I'm only getting yeses, which means I'm only talking to people that are lay downs. I'm not doing enough new prospecting. So if you're not getting some no's, you're probably not doing enough prospecting. Number 7, finally, whatever you do, don't call it selling.
Oh, geez.
Grow up a little bit.
That.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to be in sales. I think what they're trying to say here, again, they have a very skewed idea of what selling is. And so then they hate it and they want to talk about business development. Fine, whatever spin you want to put on it, but you're going to have to close the deal at some point. You're going to have to learn the tools that it takes to close the deal. I think their assumption is that if I'm selling, I'm pushing something at you that you don't want. And that's not selling. Selling is, as we've talked 100 times in the show, is finding out what the needs are and seeing if there's a connection between what you do and what their needs and issues are. And your job as a salesperson is to help them uncover those. That could be called business development. I don't care what you call it.
Right. And I think sometimes it can be misleading if you're titled something else and you're talking to somebody and you're really in a sales role, it's not going to end well. I mean, it's just not going to end well. I've been invited to meetings about, being independently wealthy and through the power of marketing and buying stuff that I already buy. And then I find out what it is. And it's just like, oh, really? That's that? I'm not interested. Don't mislead me in the future. See ya.
Your selling is selling, and it's a good thing to do if you do it right, and it's a bad thing to do if you do it wrong. Just like consulting,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you want to call yourself a consultant and you do a crappy job, then you're a bad consultant. Does that mean all consultants are bad? No, it means you lied. That's all it means. So don't take one profession and say, it's this because of how someone dealt with it. So, all right. So that's chapter 17. And next week next week we have a guest, right?
Right. The author.
Oh, of the next book, which is
The Theory of Accountability.
There you go. Scott's, we do this early in the morning and he's just getting going here.
Sam Silverstein will be with us, the author of The Theory of Accountability.
There you go.
And I read the book. I recommended the book to Bill. Bill read it. He liked it. I think we're going to have a great conversation with the author next week.
So our topic for today is setting goals and hitting quotas. And it is really hard, Scott, to accomplish superior results without setting goals and then striving to meet them. They push you. A 2015 study by psychologist Gail Matthews showed that when people write down their goals, they're 33% more likely to achieve them. And we know that. We've been told that for years. We know it to be true. And still, most people don't set goals. At least they don't set written ones. So we want to explore in this episode why don't people set goals and how they can set more effective ones, and then how goals and quotas can help us earn higher commissions, because that's our goal, right? Is to sell
absolutely.
more and earn, even though we shouldn't call it selling.
Right.
We want to sell more and then have more commissions. So Scott, number one, why don't people set goals? What do you think are the top 2 or 3 reasons people don't?
I don't think they want to feel like a failure. So if they don't set a goal, they'll never fail.
Okay.
And they'll never get outside their comfort zone, and they'll never achieve a greater life. I mean, all the magic happens outside of our comfort zone. So if we don't set any goals, we'll never fail. So we gravitate towards complacency.
Okay. So I did a little research on this, and here's an article I read. These are the 6 consensus answers. I think yours are in here somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, they don't believe in their ability to achieve them. So sometimes, we're told to set goals that push us. And then if we set them too far, then we don't believe in them. And so we give up on them too soon. You seen that happen?
Yeah, I have. I mean, we have to believe that we deserve a better life. Otherwise, there's no reason for us to change.
Yep. Number 2 is bad past experiences. I always like, I think this is a Mark Twain quote, a cat who sits on a hot stove lid will never sit on a hot stove lid again. Unfortunately, he'll never sit on a cold one either. So sometimes we learn the wrong lessons. We tried goal setting, when we were 18 and we failed, and now we're never going to try it again. So I think that can really put us in a situation where we just don't try. We give up before we start, right?
And a lot of our beliefs are determined by our experiences.
Really?
Think about, why do I believe that? Think about the experience we went through to form that belief, and then change the experience. Change the context of that experience, and you'll change your belief.
And the things that our parents told us,
Oh, absolutely.
Be careful. Yeah. Don't put yourself out on the edge too much, right? We get some bad advice. All right. Number 3, lazy or distracted by the urgent. And I like this one. Mm-hmm. We have so many urgent things to do. We never can work on, what is it? Quadrant 2, not urgent, important. Right. Not urgent, important. If you've ever seen the 4 quadrants, and those are urgent, not urgent, important, not important. And we tend to work in all the urgent categories, but planning and goal setting is a non-urgent, but important. So that's a hard one to work in. All right. So number 4, fear of more disappointment if they don't achieve. That was what you talked about, right?
Right. Yeah. They'll feel like a failure. Yep. And, best way not to lose is not to risk.
That's right. If I don't try, no one can say that I can remember I had a young lady who was a daughter of a friend of ours, and we were playing volleyball, and she wouldn't touch the ball. And it was so frustrating, but I think she was so afraid of doing something wrong that she did stuff wrong all the time. She was
Right.
constantly wrong, right?
Right.
So afraid of failure that she didn't try. All
Yeah,
right,
people ask me, "Are you a poker player?" And I said, "Well, kind of." "Well, what do you mean, kind of? You either are a poker player or you're not." I said, "I'm self-employed. I'm gambling every day. I don't need to go to the casino in order to lose more money. I
That's
mean,
right.
I
That's right.
control the outcome here. It's a better bet by betting on my business than going to the casino.
Sometimes I just flush $20 down the toilet to feel like I did. I
Buy
went
a lottery
gambling.
ticket."
That's
You
right.
know?
There you go. Number five is we have a 2 week paycheck mentality. All we can do is think about, I'm going to get my paycheck. I'm going to get my paycheck, and I'm not going to push myself outside it. We really have, I think, fast food, Scott. I think having microwaves, it's given us a mentality that says, uh, if I don't get rewarded right away, I can't do this.
Right.
So
Instant gratification.
there you go. So number six is that it's going to push them outside their comfort zone, Scott. And a lot of people don't like to be outside their comfort zone. They'd rather just kind of plod through life. They're like Wally with his coffee cup and Dilbert walking through the
Mm,
office, just trying to keep their jobs, keeping their head low. I can't remember the Teddy Roosevelt poem, the whole end of it, but I think "Man in the Arena" is it called,
right. Yeah. Yeah.
where they're the few that know neither victory nor defeat, right? They
Hmm.
never try. So
Right.
I think that those are six ideas. But how to set more effective goals? Of course, Scott, you've heard of SMART goal setting,
I
right?
have. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
So you can look this up. Let's just go through this. Number one, the S is specific. So you have to have a specific number and thing in mind. I'm going to make 50 calls a day. I'm going to get $100,000 in new sales. It's got to be a specific amount, a number, something that can be quantified. Otherwise, I'm going to do better in selling is not
Mm,
a good
mhm.
goal,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
I'm going to sell 50,000 this month. That's a good goal,
Hmm. And it's measurable, which is the M in SMART. M is measurable, so you
right?
can quantify it. How many of that are you going to get?
That's right. Number three, it's attainable. The A is attainable. That means you believe it. And this is kind of a challenge sometimes when we set too big of a goal and we don't believe it. And this is when goals are set for us by other people. Sometimes that's the challenge too. We say we believe it, but we really don't in our heart believe it.
Hmm. R is relevant. It has to be relevant to your lifestyle, to the goals that you want to accomplish as in the role and as the company. So they have to be relevant to your current situation or the future state that you want to become over time.
And isn't that the part, Scott, that makes it emotional?
It does. Yeah. What are you going to get from it? I mean, it's not about the amount of money. It's about sending your kid to college, or it's about getting a bigger boat, or it's about getting that lake home.
There you go.
That's what it's all about.
That's relevancy. And then finally, the T is for time stamped, which means you have to have a date on it. It can't be someday, here's a bad goal. Someday I'm going to get better at sales. Someday
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start studying. Someday I'm going to start. All right. You've got to say by this date, because there's nothing like a date that makes you get something done. And Scott, you and I have kind of the same bad habit. We're deadline people, aren't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When Scott and I were working on a project, we would try to, so one of us would say, well, we'll get this to you sometime next week. And the other one would go, we'll get this to you on Tuesday at 3, because
Yeah.
we know each other well enough to know that if we don't have a goal, a
Right.
time stamped goal, it just keeps moving. And then all of a
Right.
sudden it's Friday at 5 and we're like, okay, well, this is still this week, but it's Friday at 5 and it doesn't look as good. So,
Because we're working on what's urgent and not important. I mean,
well,
this we fall into that trap.
the urgency helps it to rise
Right.
to a level for us, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time stamp. That's a great way to look at your goal setting. All right, number 3, how quotas and goals should work together. So when we get quotas are something that's imposed upon us, right, Scott, by our
Right.
boss. So what are some of the challenges that you've seen with salespeople when they get a quota?
They're not emotionally committed to it. They feel like it's set by somebody else, and they feel like they're just not going to be able to reach it. It's not attainable.
Mm-hmm. I see that they don't believe it.
Right.
Somebody else gave it to them, and because that somebody else was their sales manager, they go, okay. And there was no discussion. Well, here's one of the things I see. Okay, so there's 5 salespeople. We have a $1 million budget, so each of you gets 200,000. And Larry's got a territory that did 50,000 last year, and Mark's got a territory that did 250,000. Who do you think believes they're going to hit the goal and make more money? Right?
Right. Right.
Yeah, shouldn't Mark get a little bit bigger goal? Maybe his nut is
Right.
300, and the other guy's nut is 100. I mean,
Right.
it's pushing you to the next level in your territory or in what you did. It's not evenly splitting it up so that one guy makes a lot of money and the rest of us fail.
Right. Right.
So
And leadership has to reverse engineer the quota. Your quota is going to be raised 20%. I mean, that's what we need out of your territory in order to cover the expenses. And what do you need when it comes to increasing your quota, your revenue by 20%? Tell us what you need. You need more
that's right.
training, you need more development, you need more resources. Tell us what you need. And let's work together to get there.
Right. It's got to be negotiated
Right.
so that
Yeah.
I believe it. So an effective quota then really should meet the SMART designations. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It should be specific, measurable, attainable, the big one that they don't believe. It
Right.
should be relevant. So you have to work with your salespeople to make it relevant and then put a timestamp on it. So, almost always quotas are measurable, but very seldom do they feel attainable.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're right. We really have to negotiate these with our team. And would you say reverse engineer it?
Reverse engineer it. Get to the salespeople and go, what do you need, salespeople, in order to get a 20% increase in revenue? Let's
Well,
talk about it.
that's the other thing too, right? So what they do is they just give us a number, but no new tools
Right.
to hit
Right.
that number, and so we don't believe it because it's like, well, so you've told me this a lot. So
Yeah.
so when we do that, our assumption is you were lazy last year.
Right.
So if your goal is
Screwing around.
yeah, if you were 20%, if your goal is 20% higher, you only worked at 80% last year. You're not giving me anything new to attain this goal. New training, new capabilities, new marketing. What's new that's going to help me do
Right.
this? So
Right.
so as a manager, since you're setting the goals, negotiate them, make them attainable and believable, associate them with market conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Here's what the market is happening in the marketplace. So therefore, we're gonna, Larry, we're gonna give you some new tools because we want you to move into a new area, a new city. We want your team to move into a new city. Okay, well that
Yeah.
may make we have new opportunities, so that may make those things available to us that they weren't. We have a new relationship with an outside vendor that's going to bring in a new product. Oh, okay. I may have a new product. That new product may make me more able to hit my goals because now I can do new sales to my old customers.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
then finally, I think that the whole process, this quota process, it has to be transparent and logical. It
Mm-hmm.
can't just be numbers thrown out into the wind. Somebody has to say, this is how we arrived at the number, and this is why we think you can do more this year than you did last year.
Right. I call it the PFA formula. And when I say it to salesperson, PFA formula, I mean, didn't you read about that in the sales books that you've read? No. What's PFA? Plucked from air. It's just grab it out of the air, say, okay, everybody charge. We just made up a number. It's like, no, the troops are not going to follow that. I
Yep.
mean, you got to have its substance of how did we get to this number and why?
Well,
That's the most important.
the funny thing is that the management plucked their number out of the air.
Exactly.
We're going to double revenues in 3 years.
Right.
Okay, that's
Right.
great.
Because they want a bigger boat and a lake cabin and they had an
Well,
override.
but they don't think it through, and if they don't attach it to market conditions, say we're going to build new factories, or we're going to have new products coming in, or we're going to
Mm-hmm.
have a new sales team, or we're going to pick up a new channel. If those things
Right.
aren't part of the plan, it can't just be go get them, Tiger.
Right. Right. And those are all the internal things that the company can control. The external things are the marketplace where companies may go out of business. They might not have enough help. They might be able to fail on fulfillment. They might be bought out by somebody else. And during that transition, those are all the external things that a company can capitalize on. When you're really a refined system and a refined organization, you can take on the world and take advantage of all those opportunities in the marketplace.
So in closing, what I'd say is, if you haven't written down some goals, sit down right after you're done with this episode, write down some goals. Just make 5 goals that you want for the next month or the next 2 months or the next quarter. Just write them down, put them on a post-it note, and stick them up above your desk in front of you and look at them every day. Make sure they're specific, measurable, attainable, they are relevant, and that they're time-stamped. I do have a resource guide. It's a blog called Pain of Discipline or Pain of Regret, and that will be linked on our show notes.
So our golden nugget today, and I won't be able to pronounce this author's
Ah,
name.
no, you have to pronounce it.
I don't
This
even
is
know
my
where
challenge.
to begin. I don't even know where to begin, but I love this quote. Enjoyment appears at the boundary between boredom and anxiety when the challenges are just balanced with the person's capacity to act.
And
by the author of the book Flow.
the name is what, Scott?
I don't
I'll
know if
spell it for you, and you
it's
guys
oh,
can
oh
discern.
no, that's going to take too long to spell it. I mean,
Sikkzentmihali. There is no part of that name that I could pronounce except maybe the I at the end. So,
but you will find it in the next chapter because
yeah.
that's where I pulled it from.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think that's absolutely true. That this excitement that we have is when we set a goal that we think we can attain and we can see ourselves moving closer to it. The energy that we get from that is tremendous. So, thanks for bringing up that quote.
So everything we talked about will be at winningatselling.com. And this is episode 533.
Next week, there'll be no book club because we do have a guest, Sam Silverstein, The Theory of Accountability. Go out and get better, one skill at a time.
Joyful selling.